Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sue Basciani with Tiger Home and Building Inspections. Thank you so much for coming today to join us for what to expect when we're inspecting. I'm here with Kara Golden. She's Director of Marketing. Her and I work together as marketers throughout the state of Connecticut. And I'm also here with Joe DeLaurentis. He is the presenter for today. You could go ahead and advance your slide, Joe.
Yep.
Joe has been with Tiger for 28 years. He is a principal of Tiger Group, and he does hold the supervisory pest control license along with his inspector's license. He's a member of American Society of Home Inspectors, is certified for commercial building inspecting, and has a background and specialty in new construction, remodeling and expensive knowledge in construction innovation. So besides all that, he manages our staff of 22 inspectors and enjoys doing this training for all of the realtors as well. Before we get started with the presentation, I do want to just tell you a little bit about Tiger Group if you're not familiar with us. We are a family-owned business since 1992, and we've been performing commercial assessments and residential inspections. 7 days a week we're out there because we know you guys are working 7 days a week, and we're throughout the state of Connecticut, bordering towns in New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island as well. We have 22 home inspectors. They are also licensed with the wood destroying insect license. So they are able to, which is called a supervisory S or O license. So that allows us to include that report for free with our residential home inspections. Besides that, many of them do carry specialties such as 203K, antique homes, new construction, and more. So please do keep that in mind. We also have a certified staff on hand. They do water testing for quality, and are out there setting up our electronic radon monitors as well. So they assist our inspectors so that they can really focus on the inspection and allow our certified staff to do what they specialize in. And lastly, just to let you know, we do have a mold division, so we can do those mold assessments and testing. Keep in mind, we're going to do our questions through chat. So Kara's going to be answering those. And if you have a question and Joe's in the middle of speaking, just go ahead and put that in. And when we get to our question slides, we'll answer that. And then please do stay till the end because we are going to be raffling off a Chipotle gift card. Thank you so much. And Joe, go ahead, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for logging in. As Sue mentioned, in addition to questions on the chat, we've created this particular presentation. It originally started for newer agents, but we added in the interested as well. You will find some information here that you weren't aware of about the inspection process. But that being said, those of you with experiences, stories to tell, etc., those are welcome in the chat. We can all continue to learn from these experiences. So on the agenda, we'll talk quickly just about some reminders on inspection procedures during this COVID pandemic. Then we'll move on to what is a home inspection, definitions of, and focusing on the Connecticut standards of practice for a lot of the description as to what has to be included in a home inspection and what you can expect out there in the market. What does an inspection include? Preparing for a home inspection. This is a great takeaway. Again, newer agents, things to learn, and others, procedures that you may not practice, or good reminders for helping your clients, both listing and on the buying side, prepare for home inspection day. And then some tips on selecting home inspection companies. It's not all even across the board out there in the market, and there are things that your client should be aware of when contracting with a home inspection company. So our mission has been, since we were first, considered deemed essential in real estate here, to keep our clients, they're representing realtors, and our staff safe out there in the field. We continue to provide the necessary personal protection equipment to our staff, and our policy has become ask and comply. Meet our clients, meet their realtors, meet the sellers if they happen to be at a property, and ask them, what's your preference? Would you like us to wear masks? We always wear booties or change our shoes when entering a different house, so we're not tracking things, but open to doing all that stuff. The goal is, and I feel should be in real estate, to keep the sellers happy, right? We need more of that precious inventory. We need sellers to be comfortable with things like open houses, home inspections, and showings to have people into their homes. So we also expect that our clients, when needed, will practice proper, social distancing, as it may be, as we've all learned through these changes. So that just helps us all to be able to do work. So why does your client need a home inspection? Our company's going on 30 years, myself, 27 of them, and things have changed a lot since the early home inspections. And we'll talk a little bit about licensing and standards of practice shortly and how that's changed things. But the crux of it is so that the client can have an understanding of what they're purchasing. They can make an informed decision. More and more, we're doing sellers inspections, and some even for homeowners. Again, it's learning about their property to either maintain it or prepare it for sale. They also may want to know how these systems operate. So we gauge our procedures by our clients' interest. Some are really interested in knowing everything about a furnace. How does the thermostat work? Where are the emergency switches? And what is that thing in the basement that makes noise when you turn it on? So we go through those with those clients. Additionally, we do talk more than we did 30 years ago about general maintenance practices. And the primary reason for this is some of those, when left unattended, turn into those more concerning issues. And then planning for upgrades is actually part of our licensing. The state requires us to inform clients of components of the home that are at or near the end of their service life. So this helps people to understand, okay, that 30-year-old furnace is working today, but it is at or near its expected service life, and you really need to be preparing for replacement. Setting expectations is one way that we as inspectors and or environmental testers can work with you as realtors to get our clients ready. We understand that no home is perfect, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right house or the perfect house for that buyer. Expressing to them ahead of time, we have what we call our driveway speech or initial introduction to kind of explain to clients our procedure and expectations of how the inspection may go, but also just kind of set the stage that we're going to be looking for these significantly deficient items, but we may talk about a fair amount of maintenance type things or these upgrades due to age that are probably going to occur in each of the houses in that neighborhood. As an example, they're all built in 1983. Life cycles of the components are going to be pretty similar, taking aside maintenance practices. So managing those expectations on our behalf and on your behalf by preparing them to understand, they might find a bunch of little things, but let's look out for that significantly deficient or more important component there. What is a home inspection? You saw that on our agenda. By definition, it comes from the Connecticut Standards of Practice. That's part of our licensing. Before that, and still today, there's the ASHI standards, the American Society of Home Inspectors. And that's essentially where most of the states, including Connecticut, founded their SOP from. All of those define it as a visual examination of readily accessible areas. Homes on Homes didn't do us any favors with the TV show, right? We don't want people to expect that we're going to be able to cut a big hole in the wall to investigate why there's a water stain. That supports that visual examination portion of it. The readily accessible areas, there is an understanding in the standard and in our practice that we're not going to move the dining room table, roll up the throw rug that's underneath it to make sure that the flooring is okay underneath it, perhaps, as an example for you. Those conditions are described as they exist on the day of the inspection. And the components are essentially from, top to bottom or roof to foundation, as it's often said. Our licensing is regulated by the Department of Consumer Protection, just like yours. The licensing standards established a uniform standard for home inspections. This was helpful. Early 2000s, the first talk of licensing came. I think it was around 2002 or 2003 when the statute finally went through and we were all licensed. There was some fear in the industry of licensing coming and standardization. However, at that time in the market, early days, we had some builders going out and doing home inspections and essentially issuing, spend half hour, 45 minutes on site and scribbling some notes on a piece of paper. And on the opposite side of things, we had engineers spending 4 or 5 hours on a property and 2 weeks later issuing a full narrative that most people couldn't read anyway. So the market was due for some establishment of standards of practice, and it did serve us well. Along with that, there's a code of ethics, not unlike yours, and how we are to treat people and clients and distribution of information as such as well. This standard is required to be provided to each client before or at the same time a start of a home inspection for their awareness of licensing. So licensed home inspectors, what do they provide for clients and the service itself? The second bar there is probably the most important, identifying those significantly deficient components. What are the majors, as they're said, or the most important things? Also, we do provide some education, as I mentioned, where are the controls and shutoffs. Some of that's deemed by client interest levels. And then there's the maintenance tips, explaining to clients, if hopefully they're on site, it's beneficial for them and for us, why things may or may not be working, what sort of routine maintenance needs to be done to bring things up to speed. I'll move through some of the components. If anyone has specific questions on these, feel free to chat them in. I'm not going to get into great detail on each of these, but of course, structurally, we're looking at the foundation. Where is that visible? It's usually outside the house, the basement areas, any underfloor crawl spaces, and potentially if it's slab type construction. Framing areas, we are required to probe a representative number of framing areas looking for moisture damage, of course, insect damage, etc. And access, again, is in unfinished areas, attics, basements, crawl spaces. The third bullet's important. We are required to describe the methods used to access or inspect, or more importantly, those areas that we can't get to. And a good example of that is in an attic space or maybe an underfloor crawl space in a house that we couldn't get in for whatever reason, a safety reason, or the hatch is not accessible or it's locked. But we need to make the clients aware that that's a spot that we were supposed to look at and we couldn't, and give them further direction, have the inspector come back or consult with a contractor because there's some other issue that needs to be looked at there. Of course, exterior components, most of these relate to weatherization, the real role of a property or shelter, right, to keep the weather away from us. So wall covering, flashing, if you're not familiar with the term, is anything that is an intersection of unlike materials. So siding to roofing, chimneys to roofing, window penetrations, things like that. We do look at doors and windows. In addition, anything that's attached to the house, decks, porches, entry stairs. And then on the maintenance side of things, vegetation, grading, and drainage around the building, walkways, patios, driveways, etc. there. Plumbing system, sidebar tip on this awareness, letting your sellers know a little bit about what a home inspection entails can be helpful. We have seen during this pandemic that a lot of people are working from home, staying home. So more sellers might be home during an inspection than used to be. I find that the running water is probably the most alarming thing to them. We do run a lot of water going through each fixture. We're going to run the dishwasher. We're going to fill a tub with hot water in our procedures at Tiger. So as you know, those of you that own homes or have had people working in them, hearing all this stuff going on can be bothersome. So that's a great way to set some expectations. I mentioned the water, running hot water. That's one way we check water heaters. In addition, age as well. Fuel storage and distribution, be that oil, propane gas, or natural gas throughout the house. Sumps and sump pumps, and then description. You see the capitalization there. We are only required by our licensing to describe the well systems on site. And this is an important takeaway for you to make sure your clients are getting the right service. Some inspectors do not inspect the well equipment. You clients may need to go elsewhere for a proper well inspection. And I will talk about our functional flow test. In our normal home inspections, we do inspect the well equipment, and we also offer an advanced test known as our functional flow test as well. Electrical systems, we start outside with how does power get to the building, so the service entry, and then move on to the panels and disconnects throughout. We check a representative number, as the state puts it, of fixtures, switches, outlets, and ground fault protected areas. In our company, our effort is to get to all of those that we can reach without, of course, moving furniture and such. Keep in mind the representative number that the state mandates is only one like component per room. So you may see some services provided that are very minimal, just checking one outlet or light fixture in a space. And then, of course, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, we will report on what is present. And then, of course, the attorneys will handle the affidavit for closing there with addressing smoke and CO. Heating and cooling equipment, we're going to operate those seasonally. We'll talk a little ways through about cooling equipment in the off season. Notice a couple bullets here. One is we're not required by the state standard to inspect the interior of flues and chimneys other than those that are readily accessible. So common access points are, if we're able to walk a roof or get to the top of a chimney, we can look down those interior components. Otherwise, we can look up fireplaces in clean outs at the base of a chimney and such. But, you know, unlike a chimney sweep, we're not going to take apart the chimney flue pipe and look inside from that access point. We're not going to clean and sweep a flue in order to inspect it and things like that. The other one that comes up often enough when Uncle Bob the builder, as we often call him in presentations, shows up is sizing or adequacy of equipment, distribution. Sometimes questions are asked about CFM, airflow from ducted systems, or the most common is, you know, how many tons is that air conditioner and is it big enough for this house? All of that requires calculations, measuring, determining types of windows and insulation and such, and coming up with a solution from the formula. So well beyond what should be done at a home inspection. Of course, if there's a glaring issue, an inspector may recommend a service company come in and run those calculations for the client. In those same accessible areas, we look at insulation, vapor barriers. Ventilation has become more and more important as houses have been sealed up tighter, and we'll report on the conditions there. Most of the upgrading there, you know, is just a function of client interest, energy efficiency, and such. Interiors, again, we're going to be going through looking at wall ceilings and floors. A lot of this, not unlike the electrical fixtures and plumbing fixtures, seems very repetitive. It's really not the individual outlet or window lock or some such that we're looking for. It's trying to get that representative sampling to tell us, is there a bigger problem? Did I find 15 of the 35 windows that have broken thermal seals? Now we're starting to talk about a bigger issue than one broken thermal seal with a fogged pane. Bathroom components, kitchen components. One thing on appliances, the Connecticut standard does not require the inspection of appliances. So you will see some differentiation in the market. Some inspectors who don't do anything with appliances, and others may have made decisions like ours, which we have a policy of inspecting installed appliances. So in the kitchen, things like ventilation, dishwasher, oven, range top, and garbage disposals and microwaves. Things that are not inspected to make the list shorter are laundry, washer, dryer, other than the connections, the ductwork for the dryer, the electrical or gas supply, and the water supply and drain for the washer. And the second thing is refrigeration equipment is not included in our inspections. Fireplaces, of course, are inspected, be it gas or wood burning, solid fuel stoves, wood and or pellet. Makes sense to most, but some have asked us to ignite these, to light them. Gas, of course, we can do that if the pilot is on, the remote is available, things like that. So another easy takeaway for you from the listing side, make sure that those pilot lights are lit in the off season and those remotes are available. So realtors and inspectors are not having to fish through people's drawers and such looking for remote controls for gas. Just an easy one that we run into often enough. You never know what the little hot button is going to be for a buyer. Maybe that fireplace was the most important thing for them in the house, and they really wanted to see it because they weren't able to light it at the showing. Excuse me. Wood destroying insects. Sue mentioned our licensing. The home inspection licensing does not require an inspection for wood destroying insects. Wood destroying insects includes termites, carpenter ants, carpenter bees, and powder post beetles. We made a decision years ago to include that at no extra charge with our home inspections. Additionally, to get our entire staff licensed so that we can fill out the National Pest Control form. It's provided with every home inspection so that people have the appropriate paperwork. Some need it for lending, others just to have a proper wood destroying insect report and inspection done. Your clients should be careful of inspectors that may state something like, I'll look around for wood destroying insects. However, I'm not issuing a separate report. I didn't conduct a true wood destroying insect inspection. I see some of this phraseology in some other home inspection reports. So when push comes to shove, that doesn't do your clients any service. For instance, if they needed that paperwork for a government loan, perhaps. So back to what the inspector may do, we find it very important to explain or direct the client on what needs to be done. Is there some sort of correction or repair needed? Maybe it's just budgeting for replacing that older component because it's working now and therefore monitor its performance. Putting all of this into a summary helps people to understand what are the significantly deficient items and what are simple maintenance type things. And there may be occurrence, as is directed in our licensing standard, to suggest further evaluation by a specialist, a contractor, a tradesperson. Examples of that are usually something that we can't tell the totality of. There's a soft siding, a 5-foot square from a gutter overflowing for years. You know, how much damage is there? What's it going to cost to fix it? Well, you really need to get a contractor out, potentially in some cases to do some disassembly or discovery, and or maybe just their experiences on cost estimating to provide some scope of work and pricing. Any questions come in?
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. The first one is, if there's an area that can't be inspected, what are the buyer's options to get it inspected later?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So if there's an area of the house that can't be inspected at the time of the home inspection, what are the buyer's options to have it inspected later?
Some of that relates more to your contracts than the home inspection side, but from our perspective, I see it as something that they would address during their contract contingency time frame. In other words, we had our home inspection. One thing that we're requesting is we need to do another inspection to get into the attic because it was locked. And from our perspective, we offer a return inspection. Our pricing is based on one visit and one report. Therefore, we do have a fee for inaccessible items and a separate fee for items that may have been repaired. Some of our clients wish for us to go back and see, perhaps repairs to a deck or some such that were done, and see if they were done accordingly.
Thank you. And Cindy's asking, what exactly are you looking for with the insect inspection? How do you know if it's from an old infestation or if it's no longer active to being active?
Variety of things for different insects. I'll speak generally. The most important thing when you find any evidence of wood destroying insects is records of treatment. The reason for that is most of these insects are reinfesting, and or like termites, as an example, could have a colony in the area of the home. I'll stay focused on termites because they're probably the most expensive to treat and most concerning for most clients. Termite treatment is very conclusive with the procedures and pesticides that we have today available to us. It includes treating the entire perimeter of the building. So if one finds some evidence, be it a mud tube, some section of damage, maybe some swarmers in the spring, if there isn't any evidence on site of treatment, maybe a bait system or drill holes, then the next step would be to confirm if the building's been treated in order to determine activity. The reason for that is you may have activity in an inaccessible area. In other words, the termites can come up in behind a finished wall and leave that first part of damage. Additionally, I'd have to literally break open the entire framing member that I found some damage in to determine if there was current activity, and that doesn't bode well with sellers, as an example. So the key is treatment.
Great. And lastly, on licensing, how do I know if someone is licensed that my buyer chooses? And I think you should mention home inspection licensing and also wood destroying insect. Yep.
Good point. Both licenses are through the Department of Consumer Protection. The DCP redid their website some years ago. There's a very easy license lookup there. So that would be for beforehand. The other thing for home inspection is to differentiate between an intern permit. You can actually do inspections. You can actually own a business as an individual inspector and work under your permit without even having a full license. So they can go on for years under their intern permit without concluding licensing. So something for people to be aware of when they do the license lookup.
Fantastic. And I'll just add to that, as if some of you are new realtors, over time, you're going to put together a list. And so I think what's great about this class is the takeaways of whomever those professionals are that you put on your list to refer, that they are fully licensed, have the S license for wood destroying insects. And, so you've already created a comprehensive list for them to choose from. That is all we have for questions right now.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for your participation, anybody that chatted in. Access. This is a great way for you to assist your clients and also to express to them the superstar realtor, as we like to call it, that you may be. Bring up things like preparing the house for inspection, whether you're on the listing side or the buying side. Off-season houses, some waterfront cottages and such may have seasonal heating. Make sure there's fuel and heating systems. Gas pilot lights I mentioned for things like fireplaces, could be water heaters as well. A lot of them listen to you guys and declutter the house, but they move everything to the garage and or the basement. So we don't have any way to get to things like furnaces and electric panels. Attic entry spaces are probably the most common inaccessible item because they're in a closet. Shelving has been built up too high. We're willing to move clothes and some storage and such, but it puts all of us in an awkward position when we have to start moving a seller's things around, even worse sometimes when it's a tenant. So gaining access to these places is helpful. Crawl spaces below buildings. We had a property some months ago with a locked crawl space, and listing agent was awesome. Went ahead and called a locksmith literally to come cut the lock off because it was a rental property and nobody had a key to this crawl space door. So multifamilies and/or properties with in-law apartments and such, making sure there's keys and access to all of these. It's all helpful to get these things done on inspection day. More so during COVID, right? Prevent having people to come back to properties and get everybody the right information. Some inaccessible areas may be related to winter weather. We have a policy at Tiger where we will perform one free return inspection if exterior items are snow covered. So we'd like to go out and keep the process moving for you and your clients, conduct as much of the inspection as we can. And then when we are alerted by the client that things are cleared up, we will go back and inspect things like roofs, decks, driveways, walkways, etc. In addition, in other seasonal items in the winter, air conditioning is always a prominent concern of people. We can conduct about 75% of the air conditioning inspection. We can still look at it visually, determine, is there a maintenance deficiency, and look at filters, fans, and get the age of the equipment. Everything short of being able to turn it on because of potential damage of the exterior components. So a great tip, it's a little too late, but maybe you could still get it done if you have listings still. Have a service company come out, get a clean bill of health or servicing for the air conditioning as we go into winter. That way, when a buyer is concerned about, well, we can't run it, is that air conditioning going to work? The best thing you can have is some proof that it was serviced within the last year. Same goes for irrigation and pools. Having paperwork that those were properly winterized is very comforting to a buyer. I see it many times, the paperwork's all in a little 3-ring binder on the kitchen table. They raise question about an inaccessible item, and there you have recent service records to support the performance. Some limitations as they're described by the state of Connecticut. We don't do any destructive probing or dismantling of components, disruption of personal property or contents of buildings. We'll move some things that are easily moved with permission of listing agent or sellers, but generally not moving all the furniture around in a house as an example. Safety is important. There may be circumstances that we can't get into areas unsafe. We should be listed again in the report to make people aware. The top bar here is important. Often asked at inspections, is that to code, or do you report on code? So understand that a home inspection is not a code inspection. If it was, it would be very difficult to sell anything but newer houses. And of course, a real estate transaction does not trigger satisfying building code. The building code relates to permitted work, and that goes for alterations to a building. Could be putting an addition on, putting a deck on, putting in a new furnace, etc., or a new construction, right? So that is the only time that the building code is applied. It's also not a cosmetic analysis. We don't provide house warranties with home inspections and things. Some of the other limitations that are listed: piping outside a foundation. We're going to know something about the city water supply if we have good water pressure, something about the sewer line if we have good drainage, but we're not physically testing those things because we can't see them other than some specialty service providers that may be able to use things like sewer scopes and such. Report presentation. As I mentioned, we provide the wood destroying insect report with our home inspections. I find it important both in the verbal as well as written. There should be some differentiation between what's a maintenance type item and what's a significant issue. What are those suggested upgrades due to age of components? And what are the action items Is there anything that needs some further evaluation by a contractor before purchase? What do the clients need to understand in order to make an informed decision? And all that stuff should be wrapped up into a summary to help with that differentiation, both a verbal summary at the end of the home inspection, as well as a written summary along in the report. You'll see some differentiation in reporting, but most of the reports in the market today are issued electronically. They don't have to have an agreement or a contract, but it is advisable so that the parties involved understand what's expected, what's included in that inspection service. We also include a statement, as you see here, call it a services statement or billing statement, to list each of those services. So the home inspection with the wood destroying insect, additional things like radon, potentially a mold assessment, water testing, etc. Just again, to prevent any confusion, 3 years from now, when they go to sell their house, how come I didn't get a radon test? Had to be ordered and requested. These reports are intended by the state to remain confidential between us and our clients and anybody like their representing realtor and or attorney that they approve us sending it to. Here's a quick example of our report. Shows on the left column each of the components that are inspected in the garage, and then a rating system in the center to delineate what's functioning as intended, what might need some maintenance or upgrades. And then the shaded orange are those items that need repairs, replacement, or potentially further evaluation for some further understanding. A description on the right side of materials, as well as any of those maintenance or repair replacement items as well. Questions again?
Yes. Question is, do you bring a ladder for attic inspections?
Absolutely. All of our inspectors carry step ladders or some form of expandable ladder to get up into attic scuttle spaces. I will say the one thing that limits us in a lot of attics is a way to traverse the framing. It can be problematic trying to walk through loose insulation where you can't see the framing. And of course, the ultimate nightmare of stepping through a ceiling and such is on our minds. So at least, yes, we have a ladder to get up, look in, and hopefully there's a way to traverse as well.
And what are you looking for when inspecting a pool in the warmer weather?
We do not, sorry if I misspoke there. We do not inspect pools. That was just a tip of things that would be, seasonally not accessible for people. So pool inspection should be conducted by a pool company that does a qualified inspection on that. And they're usually checking the liners, the plumbing, the heating equipment, filtration equipment, and also safety components, ladders, door accesses, fences, door accesses, etc.
Great, that's it for now.
Moving on to optional environmental tests. This is a list of the things we'll speak about. The left column are all things that we test at Tiger Home Inspection. The others on the right are things that require licensing beyond a home inspection license. I'll touch on those because they will fall into things some of your clients may consider, and they're in some regards based on the property itself, the age and the systems in place as well. So radon discussion, well water testing, including quality and that functional flow test. And I'll also talk about mold assessments as well. We do have several one-hour seminars that cover more of this, one specifically on radon and another specifically on mold assessments. We'll touch on radon briefly, and because we could go on for a while, but ask any questions that may come up. Of course, radon is a gas. We need to test for it with an approved, EPA-approved device because we can't smell it, taste it, or see it. It is considered by the EPA and the Lung Cancer Association to be the second leading cause of lung cancer. That's a good reason to test. The EPA level is 4.0 picocuries per liter and above. They recommend either long-term testing or mitigation. Testing methods, you've probably seen some of these out in the field. The two on the left and the one on the bottom right are what are called passive devices. And the definition of that from the EPA is a device that you leave in place, come back and retrieve, send off to a laboratory. These devices are considered accurate if they are used according to EPA protocols. However, some of the deficiencies or negatives are you only get one reading from them, although you may have two devices that they're averaged. So you don't know anything about what's going on during that test. And secondly, time frames are a bit longer. Most of these need to be sent to a laboratory and analyzed. So a mail-in homeowner type could be up to 2 weeks. Those used by professionals could be, 4 or 5 days, up to a week to get results back. That leads me up to an active device or the continuous radon monitor. Some 10 plus years ago, we made a decision to switch over to just using the electronic monitors. The primary reason for this is they give us good data. Through a minimum 48-hour test, we're going to get a reading every hour. Not only is it giving us the radon levels, but it's also giving us good data to understand parameters of the test that may have impacted the radon levels. Those are humidity, barometric pressure, temperature. There's also a tamper alarm on there as well. So the last thing that's very important is the timing. When these devices are retrieved, the first thing we can do is look at that data and determine, yes, we got a good test. Secondly, download it right to our phone and email it to clients and their representing agents, so that they'll get that information. You'll get that information right at the time of reading the device. So mitigation systems, should someone come back at 4.0 or above, you may see on the left the mitigation system installed outside the house, as many of us are used to seeing. The right side is an internal installation related to new construction, where there's requirements for radon resistant new construction piping to be installed, and simply put the fan in, usually up in an attic space or basement area that has been pre-wired for. Moving on to well water, radon and water, to stay on the radon side of things. One important takeaway is the EPA does not govern radon water. In other words, they did not set the guideline, unlike air where they set the guideline. So Connecticut sets the radon water guideline, and that is at 5,000 picocuries. This relates to that third bullet there, where during some surveys, our average radon level was throughout the state was determined to be 3,000 picocuries, and therefore they're able to set our level from that. Living in the Northeast region, we have some of the highest levels in the country. This is part of the reason why they left it up to the states for jurisdiction on the radon water levels. The last bullet's also an important one to understand what your clients are getting for testing. Connecticut DPH recommends a dual vial sample, so doing 2 samples. Part of that is for good scientific measure. In other words, you want to be sure you got 2 good tests and that there's the proper relative difference there, if any. And secondly, it's there because there can be some fluctuation in testing. So they do say that you should not move directly to mitigation based on a single vial test. The tip here is that if someone returns a single vial test that's above limits, the first step is do another test, not move to mitigation. So keep that in mind. I say this to you because our testing includes that 2 vial sample from the get-go. We do this so that there's no confusion. Everybody gets the right data in a timely manner to move through real estate transaction. Mitigation methods, for lower levels that are above the guideline, up to 10,000, some say 8,000 range, we use granular activated carbon. This is the canister that's all the way to the right in the image, the full height white canister. Other well equipment, just while we're on it for your education, the farthest to the right, the small canister is a sediment filter. And then you have that granular activated carbon radon filter. Next to that is a softening system, a water softener. Next to that, of course, is the water heater. And lastly is the blue pressure tank as part of the well pumping system. Costs for GAC are a little less than the next option we'll see, less than $2,000. However, they do require yearly maintenance. For higher levels, aeration or bubble up systems, as they're referred to, are 99% effective. They do get quite a bit more expensive. Part of that is because we have an active aeration system there, that black box, and then we have to pipe, the white pipe leaving it goes up and out above the roof line. And next to it is another pressure tank and a well pump in order to repressurize the water and put it back in the house. So you can see how things get a bit more expensive with the higher levels. The most common test that we do for wells is the potability test. The two most important takeaways here that would come back from the lab as not safe for drinking are the coliform bacteria and the nitrate nitrogen. The nitrate nitrogen may as well trigger a pesticide test. The rest of these may be detrimental to plumbing. Some like acidity could cause corrosion in pipes. You may get some mineralization and corrosion on things. And then there could be color, odor, taste kind of issues as well. All of these are addressable with filtration or chlorination. Other advanced tests that we see clients doing, the pesticides and VOCs are really site related. So on the pesticide side of things, are we near an orchard, a golf course, farm area, things like that. The VOCs could also be farm related, prior oil tank on site, a gas station nearby, train tracks and such reasons potentially to test a VOC scan. Arsenic and uranium have gained popularity since a survey was put forth by the geological study and then went to the state of Connecticut, and the DPH suggests arsenic and uranium testing as well. The functional flow test that I mentioned to you earlier is something that we do with home inspections as an extra test. It reports on the condition and the performance of a well. We give a 1 hour reading of the flow and the pressure so that people understand how the well will perform and does it provide enough water for normal household usage. These are different than a yield or recovery test. We're reporting on what the pump is giving us for gallons per minute and pressure. We're looking at the well head, the pressure tank, any accessible pumping equipment, and the controls for the pumps. If you get involved in a recovery test, it's more detailed and more informative. A well company would do something like this. They're physically going to open the top of the well, measure the height of the water in the well, and then drain the well potentially down to failure and see how fast that water comes back up, giving you that recovery rate as it may be. Additionally, they'll inspect that same equipment that I referenced earlier. So anybody that has a definite concern for a well, maybe that's prompted by a disclosure statement, or you may get a hold of the well drilling record from the town and it shows a low yield well that was drilled 20 years ago as an example. That's a client that I would suggest you direct to a well company to do the recovery test. It's more advanced. Our functional flow test can be preliminary to that. It may in fact be what we recommend from the results of our functional flow test in some circumstances. Of course, costs are a little different, so ours may be a good starting point for some people. Yield tests are completely different. Those are conducted at the time of drilling a well. Important to use these terms. They are not interchangeable. Yield tests are done with a separate pumping system to determine what's the initial yield of the well, not what the housing system is pumping or the recovery rate of it. Moving on to mold in a home. The key here is to understand that we need moisture as well as an organic material in order to have mold concerns. That moisture can be very obvious, leaking roof or plumbing leak, maybe a water flood issue, broken water heater, or wet basement. But it can also be difficult to discern. Maybe it's just high humidity in a basement or crawl space. Maybe it's an improperly vented appliance. Could be something that's going on without the owner's acknowledgement of it, improperly vented fans and such. Once that moisture interacts with that organic material, there's a lot of it in a house, could just be the wood framing, wall board, things like that. Then we have the growth of mold of a variety of different types. Once those spores are released into the air, that's what has an impact on our breathing, and everybody is impacted differently on that. So therefore, air samples are part of that assessment. The diagram that's included here on this slide shows some of that. The humidity issues in the basement, could be fireplace issues, drafty condensation issues on windows, and then potentially other ventilation issues for things inside the house, and then the plumbing leaks, roof leaks, etc. Who needs a mold assessment? To be perfectly honest with you, we never wanted to be in the mold assessment business. Because of continued client requests, some 10 years ago, we started to look into development of a good mold assessment to help our clients to not incite fear or major concerns. We saw some very simple testing going on in the market, which people would, the result would be a lab result that was very hard to read and understand. So our clients come to us with a variety of questions on this. Maybe they have a sensitivity to mold, allergies, or their children do. Maybe they have a history of a prior property having a mold concern. Others may have increased health risks, be it respiratory or heart things. Some just have concerns because they saw something in the house. Again, there's a history of a wet basement. Do you think there's a mold concern? So these are the reasons people do some testing. Our mold assessment, as I mentioned, as we've developed it, is in a couple of parts here. The first is a thorough analysis of the property, exterior and interior, really just focusing on moisture and or visible mold, elevated levels of humidity, conditions that are conducive to mold. You see a simple example here in the image of long-term condensation, potentially some flashing, leaking on a window. Yes, we see what's visible there in that property. That moisture for a long time continued down into the wall cavity below and portions of the carpeting and subfloor below it. So yes, there was some remediation to be done. Those mold spores were getting out into the house as well. So we were able to define, where the repairs or remediation needed to be done. The second part of the mold assessment after the visual assessment is performing the sampling. That always includes air sampling. Additionally, may include some surface sampling to kind of match up what may come back from the lab. What is the source of what comes back in the air that can be beneficial? Everything goes to the lab, and when it comes back, our mold assessors then take it and put it into a report, call it a cover letter, maybe, that takes the on-site information, analysis results from infrared camera, visual observation, and then the lab results to direct our clients. Is this something that just needs some homeowner cleanup? Is this something that doesn't need anything? Or is this something that needs a professional remediator? There's an example of what we're seeing in a lot of attics. Sorry, I'm getting some text here from Sue. I see it, Sue. Some visible mold in attic spaces from condensation coming up more and more on inspections. A lot of this relates to improperly vented bathroom exhaust fans or poor ventilation in attic spaces as well. Some other specialized tests that may come up, asbestos would relate to age of house, lead paint would relate to age of house. You all have this very well covered in your lead paint disclosure form. Septic systems, of course, are site related, and then underground fuel tanks most likely would relate to age as well. All of these are not part of the scope of work in Connecticut for a home inspection. If we see some signs of some of this, predominantly the asbestos or the underground fuel tank, that would be a time we would recommend that further evaluation by a specialist. Asbestos essentially is a good insulating product found in homes built prior to 1978. The image included is very common pipe insulation that we see on properties. And the next slide shows vermiculite attic insulation. We see that in walls and ceilings, attic spaces, is considered by the EPA to be asbestos containing. Zonalite is the primary manufacturer. We put that website up there. If you run across this, check the zonalite attic insulation.com. There was a class action lawsuit and monies provided for remediation. Lead paint, heaviest in the 1940s to 60s. I did a lot of lead paint testing in my early home inspection career. Those areas tested in a lot of trim, siding, interior components. Moving up into later years, 60s, 70s, and most of it was window and door components from manufacturers. You could, in fact, test the whole house with the images of an X-ray fluorescence device. I don't see many clients doing any testing for lead paint. My personal opinion is, by age of house, acknowledge that there's the potential for presence. Contract with contractors that are certified to work on houses that fit the age of potential lead paint. And if you're doing anything on your own, the EPA has great direction for people on good lead safe protocols. So maintain your paint and practice safe building practices on that. Septic systems, if you've seen the guy digging around out in the yard, what is he after? Well, there's an image here to help you with that. The septic tank has 1 or 2 inspection ports. That's what they're trying to identify and open up. There's a line from the house and then to the tank, and then after the tank, we would leave to enter into a leaching system. That's an example of a manufactured infiltrator type leaching system. If you've heard distribution box as an example, that would be where these pipes split from the outlet pipe to 2 pipes. Baffles would be inside the tank with the intent to keep the solids in the tank and not exiting. Underground fuel tanks, of course, predominantly relate to age. There is no regulation for smaller residential sized tanks under 2,000 gallons to be removed. However, you see in our market that most people are going to remove them or confirm that they were appropriately abandoned on site before moving forward with purchase. And we may see some signs of an underground oil tank. Paperwork is extremely important. So again, prepare your listings. If for any reason there was evidence of a prior tank, make sure to get that paperwork ahead of time, just to prevent buyers from getting excited about whether there is or isn't, or if they need a tank search done, etc. Questions?
You have a couple questions here, and I know we're running late on time. Okay, so you're dealing with a 40-year-old oil furnace that has not been serviced in 5 years. What is an example of the statement that you would make of the current condition and possible action?
I'll assume by your statement that it's working and providing heat. So my statement would first say that the furnace operated properly, providing heat. There's no current service records, and the system is operating beyond its expected service life, and you should budget for replacement, repairs or upgrade of the system.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay. What do I mark on a purchase and sale agreement for inspections? Joe, I'm not sure if you've seen one of those.
I have. So I think Eastern Connecticut Board probably has the most prominent things to check on there, if I remember correctly. There's a variety of contracts throughout the state, so I can only speak very generally. Because a home inspection doesn't always include the termite or wood destroying insect, I should say, I would say a home inspection and then wood destroying insect inspection. If the property has a well, you'll want to reference both well quality and quantity or well performance testing, maybe a substitute for quantity. Age of house, if your client's concerned with asbestos, perhaps include that. Septic, if it's on site. It's a lot of it's site specific, so that gives you some examples.
Great. And lastly, for the bubble system for radon and water, how often do they need to be serviced?
That's going to depend on the manufacturer, but it would be a good idea to have it looked at once a year. There's not a lot that needs to be done for maintenance other than confirm that it's still working. So sometimes there's other well equipment there. When they come to service that stuff, someone can just look it over and make sure it's still working. But there's no definitive need to change anything like the granular activated carbon. They physically have to take that canister out and change it with a new one because it's loaded up with radioactive material.
Super, thanks. You can do the last few slides as we finish up here.
Talk quickly about cost. Most important thing to remember is you will see variation in the market, and a lot of that relates to service provided. And each house will be priced differently based on the size and the age of the house. Is a good general feeling across the state of how people are pricing. Here's some average costs for you. Home inspection, remembering that some, like our company, include it. Others may have an extra fee for people on that insect inspection. Optional environmental testing. There's some ranges there for radon air testing. Some of that is based on the device that's being used that we discussed. Radon water, you'll see the lower side is a single vial sample, and some people are higher there on that radon water testing. Water potability ranges. Septic's a pretty big range with the advent of pipe cameras. A lot of septic guys are doing more thorough inspections, and therefore costs have gone up. And then the mold assessment, you see the $400 as a base. In our assessment, we include 2 samples with the visual and infrared assessment. And if additional samples are added, then those costs go up there at $75 per sample. Helping your clients prepare for a home inspection. Remember, both the buyers and the sellers could use some help preparing for inspection day. Setting those expectations are very helpful. Sometimes telling a seller that, hey, the inspector, the appointment's at 9, they may show up a little bit early, and then they're going to be in the house for 2 or 3 hours as a good guesstimate range. Buyers should attend without distractions. It is helpful for them to be there, have questions, et cetera, at inspection time. Choosing inspectors. We talked about licensing already. Checking that, whoever brought up that question, is a great idea. I usually ask the question, but we don't have a good Q&A format here, so I'll just give you the answer. Insurance is not provided for home inspectors in the state of, insurance is not required for home inspectors in the state of Connecticut. So this is very important. You can literally own and operate a home inspection company without having any insurance. Errors and emissions is the most commonly asked about. It's good, responsible business to have that. Liability insurance is another one that's not commonly asked about. What happens on your listing if somebody leaves a ladder up and it's blown down by the wind and lands on the seller's car? You should be sure that people have the appropriate insurance to work with your buyer clients and on your listings. And for those with employees, be it the home inspection company, septic company, or anything, make sure that they have workers' compensation insurance. Full service, we offer all those environmental tests that I referenced to you earlier. We have specific individuals who carry the appropriate certifications to conduct those. Our goal is efficiency and accuracy in those so that we can get you as realtors and our clients the right information to move through the real estate transaction. It's very important to understand reputation, credentials, and experience when your clients are choosing home inspection companies. By doing these types of seminars, a lot of them used to be in office. We've learned a lot about what you all go through. as realtors in your business practices. It's helped us to develop our services in order to work you and your clients through the process. We'll also provide some documents to you, 3 of them. One is inspection day preparation. So some of those tips that I mentioned to you are all laid out on a piece of paper and or by email to give your buyers and sellers. Let's Schedule an Inspection is a great document to forward to buyers to get ready for scheduling, so they have all the right information and know what test options are available to them. And lastly, I've referred to the Connecticut Standard of Practice throughout this conversation. We'll send you a copy of those so that you have a reference of what's required of a home inspector. My name's Joe DeLaurentis. My sister Kara Golden is with us, and Sue Fasciani. They are our marketing and business development staff here at Tiger. And if there's any further questions, I can help with those too.
We don't have any questions. Sue, do you want to tell us who our raffle winner is?
Oh,
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for sending in those great questions. And our raffle winner for the Chipotle gift card is Mark. He's in the Glastonbury, Berkshire Hathaway office. So congratulations. I will reach out to you. Yay.
Yay. We really enjoy that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do want to let everyone know, I will follow up with an email with those documents that Joe just mentioned, and also with the recording of today. Thank you so much for attending, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.